James Thomas, morning, Glenn. I'm here today with John Bowman, who is the president of the St. Louis County NAACP. Good morning, John. How are you?
Good morning, James. It's good to see you, my friend.
It's good seeing you after all this time, definitely. This is a segment we're doing, a series we're doing, sponsored by Midwest Bank Center, on the economic impact and inclusiveness of the African-American community in St. Louis. And you and I were just talking a few minutes ago, and I was explaining to you that in the late 60s and early 70s, when I grew up in North St. Louis, it was a strong middle-class African-American community. And that's because of the manufacturing plants in and around North County and St. Charles, Wentzville, Fenton, and on Grand and St. Louis Avenue. All of our parents either worked at the post office, they worked for GM, Ford, Chrysler, the only Corvette plant in the US, right there, Goodfellow and Natural Bridge, and the only carburetor to go in that Corvette was that Carter carburetor at St. Louis Avenue and Goodfellow. So houses were beautiful along Natural Bridge, all the way from Grand, all the way down to Goodfellow and beyond. West Florissant, O'Fallon Park were like mansions surrounding that park. But today, when you go in those areas, it looks like somebody dropped a bomb.
Right.
So what happened with North St. Louis?
Several things I think occurred. I think the Team 4 plan that was initiated was targeting North St. Louis to release a detrimental impact by removing all of the economic growth opportunities that were in that area. You just named many of them. Several of my family members worked at General Motors, Carter Carburetors. Those were good paying jobs that produced a middle class lifestyle. I lived on Lillian and Wren in Northwest High School, and we had a postal worker, a police officer, as well as factory workers and teachers. It was a mixed blend of a community that had tremendous economic wealth and power. The service stations were Black owned. Some of the other businesses were Black owned. And so there was a recirculation of our dollars in a way that we no longer see. So North St. Louis fell prey to several things. Disinvestment economically, as well as I get a lot of pushback on this, but I'm not so sure the DSA program was the best thing that happened to our community. It took out a lot of the talent and the recirculation of brain power that was going on in our community and moved it out to outlying areas. And in many cases, those schools were not as nurturing. They didn't have the same type of relationship with the children as we had been afforded in the public school system. And then the suburban flight, where the white population that once also blended into North St. Louis began to move to St. Charles and further out in other areas. So all of those had a real negative impact economically on North St. Louis.
So here's a question, and one of the questions I've been asking: what impact does inclusion have on the economic development of the St. Louis region?
It's extremely important. Inclusivity is the main ingredient to the success of any region. And we have to hold people accountable to the point that they just stop using it as buzzwords, inclusion and diversity. It has to be an action. I have had to have some real hard conversations with corporate leaders on that very topic, on implicit bias and structural racism and those things that determine the growth of our community, by also the unfairness of policing our communities and weaponizing our people because of their color. All of those things have a real negative impact. And if corporate America and St. Louis region ever wants to grow to the level that and be the type of city that St. Louis has the potential to be and perform in true excellence, they can't just talk about diversity. They really have to exercise inclusiveness. And what I'm seeing now is I hear a lot of talk about it, but the actions are not keeping up with the conversation.
Daphne Moore agrees with you on that. She thinks inclusion is a nice little buzzword. We do need action. Here's another question for you. The digital divide has an impact on inclusion action. How can this community work towards bridging the digital divide in St. Louis?
People will elect to offices that control those dollars coming through from the federal and state government down to local government. It has to make it a priority that all areas, especially in low-income and underserved communities, are given access to the latest and greatest technology in order to keep up with the way the direction of this country is moving and the economy. It's all tied to intellectual properties and intellectual internet use and those type of things. So if we don't have the service, our kids can't go to a school that's fully equipped with the latest technology, have access to Wi-Fi services that the speeds that are required. Once again, it is diminishing the growth in our community. And I attribute a lot of these structural behaviors to anti-Blackness. I am beyond using just the term racism because it has become such a broader term and so many people using it. It is strictly anti-Blackness that we witness, but we're not afforded the same intellectual use as other communities are. I mean, as far as technology goes, it's out there. The state has funding coming from the federal government. Why is there not more broadband being laid into the Black community? Why is there not more technical investment in our communities? This is a question that our leaders need to be really enforcing.
John, I got one last question for you, and that is, as president of the St. Louis County NAACP, what is your vision of inclusion for the St. Louis region?
So just recently, one of the corporations that I had to take to task because of some discriminatory behavior that was going on in a company, and the Black community invests a tremendous amount of dollars in their product. So I had a meeting with them as my vice president and several other people, and I just laid the law down to them in a way that they only understood. This piece was a conversation to try to resolve an issue civilly. But if it comes down to it, me growing up in a world of the UAW and the unions, one of my best skills is setting up a picket line. So if they did not acknowledge how we needed to change the dynamics of hiring practices and the way they were treating people of color on their job site, I promised them the next time they saw me, I would be standing out in front of a building with a picket sign, with some of my members, and with bullhorns and 3 or 4 of the major news channels that I could get to come out there with me. And that conversation shifted to the next person they hired for their human resource director was a young African-American. And with that, I think if we can get people of color in higher positions as executives and as corporate leaders, and they're true to the need of hiring people who are skilled, and they just so happen to be Black, that is the direction to move in. We have to have people in those higher decision-making positions that remember you are there because you're supposed to even the playing field. You're not there to be a token. You're not just there to be someone who sits there and look like you're supposed to look. You're supposed to be the one that makes sure the right things are done to even the playing field for people of color.
John Bowman, thank you so much for joining us on Morning Blend and talking about the economic impact and inclusiveness of the African-American community in St. Louis. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, James. Thanks for having me on. Good seeing you.